Today we're going to be working on solving compound inequalities. Before we dive right into the compound inequalities, this is extremely important. When you are graphing inequalities, the x should be on the left side of the inequality so that the inequality is graphed correctly. So in this example we have x is less than 2, so it's on the left side, so that's perfectly fine. Over here we have 7 is greater than x. Since the x is on the right side, we have to switch this around and make it x is less than, or x is less than 7. So it's very important, especially when you're graphing, especially during compound inequalities. So what exactly does a compound inequality look like? Well, here's an example that we have down here. I have negative 2 is less than or equal to x minus 3 less than 4. So there are two different inequalities here. So we have the negative 2 is less than or equal to x minus 3. That's one inequality. The next inequality is x minus 3 is less than 4. There's another inequality. So there's two inequalities put together. So how you solve them? I have two steps for you. Step 1. Split the compound inequality into two statements. That's why I have this line here. So if we split it up, negative 2 is less than or equal to x minus 3. That is the first part of the compound inequality. Second part, x minus 3 is less than 4. So that's step 1. Step 2, basically just solve for each statement individually. So when we do this, to get x by itself in the first one, we have to add 3 to both sides. So 1 is less than or equal to x. But remember that the x has to be on the left side. So I'm going to change that to x is greater than or equal to 1. So there's our first one. Second one, we'll do plus 3 on both sides. So now we have x is less than 7. So now we have the compound inequality solved for each separate statement. Okay, now that we've solved for the two different statements of the compound inequalities, now I want to figure out how to graph the compound inequalities. So now we have our two solutions. We have x is greater than or equal to 1, and x is less than 7. So basically, we just graph each one of them individually. So let's start off with x is less than or equal to 1. So we go to 1, and the circle has to be closed in. And it looks like the arrow is going to be going over to the right. So we're going to put it over to the right. And then for the red one, we have x is less than 7, so it's an open circle above the 7. Now you see how it's an arrow to the left. What we could do is, since both of these are going to be running into each other, we would, if I just erase these arrows, we just draw one straight line from each other, and that, where they overlap, is how you graph an inequality. Alright, so now what I want you to do, I want you to solve this compound inequality. It might look a little bit different than what I've shown you, but solve this inequality, followed by this inequality, and then what I want you to do is combine and graph the answers. It's still a compound inequality, even though these two look differently. So give it your best shot, and then unpause the video when you're ready to see what I've done. Okay, so first thing, we're going to have to solve for m in both of these equations, or in both of these inequalities. So let's work on the one on the left. So to get m by itself, we'll subtract 7 from both sides, and all we'll have left on the left is a negative 2m is less than or equal to 6. Now we're going to divide by negative 2 on both sides. When we divide by a negative, remember we flip the signs. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So now we have one inequality, where it's m is less than or equal to negative 3. That's 1. Next thing, if 5m plus 12 is greater than 37, we need to subtract 12 from both sides. With that, we get 5m is greater than 25. To get m by itself, you have to divide by a positive 5 on both sides. So we'd have m is greater than 5. So now we have our second inequality. M is greater than 5. So, looks like m is on the left side of both inequalities, so now we can graph. So we'll go to the negative 3 and draw a circle, and it needs to be colored in since it's or equal to. It looks like we're going to be drawing an arrow that's off to the right. And then we have m is greater than 5. And that's not filled in. It looks like there's another arrow going off to the right as well. But, so now we notice that the arrows aren't going towards each other. So what you could do is you could just draw one continuous arrow from negative 3 and just keep continuously drawing it. So it would look like an arrow that just continuously goes to the right from negative 3. Alright, time for a quick review. When we're talking about compound inequalities, the one thing that you're supposed to be doing is you solve it and graph it, each inequality independently. Solve it each by itself. When you are graphing, make sure the variable is always on the left side of the inequality when you're graphing, or else your graph is going to be incorrect. Please take your time with this. Please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever.